ba ba. Ba 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 ba. 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 Wink. All right. Today, welcome. All right. Let's see. Welcome. 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 Today we have a reading by yours truly. Today we're reading herscherik chapter 4. Letter Magic Intruders Part 1. Woo! Alright. Let me see. What was I? Actually, I know what I left off from. It's just that it's been a while since we last read together. I know, right? It's been a while. It's been a long while. I think that's right. We left off right at where right out of where Count died. So let's recap. Right after the Count died, I had not read for months. I'm sure already. So so you know. Okay, let's just turn back this page over here. Sorry, we're going off tangent. I know. Chapter 4 Letters, Magic, and Intruders, Part 1. Are you serious? Herschel was in the middle of something unexpected. The day after Count Luxaria left the world, Herschel, who thought he needed knowledge to do anything, offered his father to study. My father did not listen in depth to my son's offer. This is so weird. Uh Let me just wait a second. Who did this? Oh my god. What a horrible. Okay, let's do it again. Oh, Count or Earl? I'm really serious. The Count or Earl? He's Earl, right? The Earl. Are you serious? Hershey was. At, are you serious? Hershey unexpected situation have him at loss. The day after Count, the day after Earl of Luxaria left this world, Hershey decided to increase his knowledge was necessary if he wanted to change anything. He suggested that he might wanted to study, and his father, without questioning his son too deeply, immediately arranged teachers the very next day. First was language study. He managed to adapt this world's alphabet as it as, as it resembles English he learned back in Japan. Truthfully speaking, English wasn't his strong point, but he had already learned it once in his past life and had experience. The teacher in charge of the language lesson praised him for picking it up so quickly despite being so young. Sorry, but I'm at least 10 times older than my 3-year-old exterior suggests. Hershey experienced a feeling of inexplicable, inexplicable, inexplicable guilt and apologizes in his head. Next came what is this all these hard words? Next came um arithmetic. Arithmetic. This world's arithmetic was barely any different, resembling the decimal system, but with a different symbols, so he easily picked it up as well. Rather considering he worked as an office clerk in his previous life, simple mental calculation were a hinge. He was praised for just like with his he was praised with just like his language study. Hershey was once again apologizing inside his head for the same reason he could endure it for, for the same reason. Here, he suddenly found something delicious. For some reason, although the letters were different, the word sounds like Japanese. Ooh. He thought it was strange, but he recalled that he had tamed an eagle when he was roughly 1 year old. This was a only conjecture, but listening to conversations around him might have unconsciously made him remember this language as the one he was familiar with. I had thought that this was Japanese, but it was actually this world's language, huh? This is it's like when someone in Japan can speak Japanese before they're aware they can. Same with the English. English in English speaking country and French speaking countries. In other words, it in other words, it can be said that these words might have already ingrained in him as he had consistently listening to them ever since he was born in this world. But his memory made him think it was Japanese. Anyways, while he could not remember when his previous self started speaking Japanese like that, he decided to be satisfied with this explanation. Actually, before we continue, about better this way. Sorry for the short conjecture. Like how I wanted to be American. Like how I want to be American during his English lesson in his previous life. Herscherik has been doing very well up until now, with with the appearance of 3-year-old child and the interior of 34-year-old member of society on the verge of being an old lady. He had already had methods to know how for studying. This was the result of his past life experience, equivalent to him getting the qualifications for employment and society in one go. After all, his lessons right now would have been the level of elementary school's curriculum in Japan. Hmm. But now, clouds are hanging overhead. It's a shame, but but the teacher apologizes. By no means had he done something wrong. In fact, the fault lies with Herschel. For your highness, magic is a foundation necessity, but it seems like you do not have any magical powers. Oh, poor Herschel. No magical powers, huh? It's hard for him to believe. Let me just wait a minute. Let me just up the computer version. Waiting for my phone's a little hard for me. Where was I? Okay, here. Today I didn't have any more. Today I didn't have any magical power. Uh, the moment the teacher said those words, Hershrick's mind went blank, and screams rang his head. While this didn't show on his face, the unrest inside him was intense. The power of ruler was shown in manga and games, magic. In his past life, that fantasy element like magic was something only a child consistently thought of and craved of. But although only his outer appearance was of 3 year old, Patrick was honestly looking forward to it. But reality was harsh. He tested his magic by simply making a flame to light a lamp, but nothing happened. This is a really weird case. According to his magic teacher, all humans have some amount of magic dwell inside their bodies. Lighting a lamp is something anyone, at any level of magic could do. So this would make it the first time a magic teacher have seen a human without any magical power. Your Majesty had originally intended to become a scholar, but considering he had talent for magic, there is no way this child would able to use magic, is what he implied. Or what he had implied. He heard that the other prince and princesses also excelled in magic, and were all rated first class. And this is possible that he isn't his father's son. Is it possible that he isn't his father's son? Similar thoughts fill Herschel's mind. So he visits his busy father's private room that night looking depressed. Well, your mother was also a rare case with no magic, Hershey. We look so alike, of course, you're my child. His father said unconcernedly as he patted Herschel's head. Mother, I'm sorry for thinking of you had an affair. And he said he had a sliding thought to his mother that had never met. But in the reincarnation manga and novel, the reincarnated usually gets some immersive magical power and stuff, right? The protagonist in his story he read in his past life had magic, and it was a level above a normal person, any normal person. And their setting would be such that they would send villainous flying with fire and such. Nah, even if I could do that, I wouldn't. In any case, if his opponent were the type to end up with just one flying hit, he wouldn't be suffering this much. Moreover, Hershrik felt like you couldn't really call it call it a resolution from the result that was simply shown of a brute power. Regardless, this fact that he could have used for a fantastical element of magic was disheartening. After receiving such shock revelation about his lack of magical power, another core component of many fantasy stories that Hershey no Ryoko happily read was destroyed. Oh, I wouldn't want to call your majesty ordinary, but how shall I put it? Just like his teacher from the Order of Knights apologizes as well. Hmm. After a time from the military service, the teacher was tasked with training all the troops in the Order of Knight and Army. As such, he was proficient at assessing his trainees' potential. The teacher was initially hesitant to say, but after resolving himself, he looked at Herschel and spoke frankly. Your Majesty, I apologize for this. I will speak honestly. Your Highness has no, Your Highness does not have the talent for fencing nor for horsemanship. Herschel understand this was the kindest way Perseer of talent could make someone lose their futile hope. According to the teacher, if Hershey worked hard enough, he may one day be able to handle the sword and horse like everyone else. But he should not able to hold into but he should not hold any but he should not hold into any hope of becoming first rated swordsman or magician. Although His Majesty was excellent in magic, he was also excellent in swordsmanship. As such, Hershrik recalled having similar words before, but this time he decided that he couldn't charge into his father's room. I mean, that gentle father was surprisingly high spec. He was very high spec, huh? High magical power and really good swordsmanship. His father and his His father and his kind smile come to mind. Frankly, Hershey couldn't imagine his father firing off magic or fighting with sword. At any rate, he couldn't depend on using swordsmanship or horsemanship in order to protect himself, but just as spoke how difficult his path would be. I know that I have pretty slow reflexes in my past life, but but Patrick sat on a sofa in his room, exhausted. Who would have thought that his protagonist's flag would keep breaking? He had thought this before, but it seems that he was disappointing child among the princes. If this were a, if this were a ultimate game, he would have been a character that a player would put off to the end and just use it and use a strategic guy, a strategy guide for the sake of completing the game. But I don't have the luxury to be depressed. There's no hoping what he cannot do. Instead, Herschel thought what he could do. He took out a book borrowed from the inner palace library that was only accessible to the royal family. Although this is more fitting to be called a picture book, the letter was large and there were many illustrations. It was a book that was easy to understand. First, I had to make sure that I can actually read words. Ryoko wasn't good at English, but she did like three books. Whenever whenever there was a book she was interested in, she would hold back bitter tears because it couldn't be translated into Japanese. In the past, she couldn't have any free time since I was working. But now I'm a child, I got plenty of time. He will read a large amount of books and learn words, as well as get a grasp of numerical numbers. His experience from his past life told him that that was the best and way to grow and was to put everything to practice. Since that day, Fisher continued to take lessons from his teachers while spending the majority of each day by his window reading on the sofa. The moment he couldn't understand something, he would neither ask his teacher or Maria. As such, Hershey's language ability gradually increased. He would read whenever he got a chance, and do so for half a year resulted in a level of growth where he could read where he could even read difficult to understand technical books. And now it looks like it's finally time for our 90 candidate news report. And now it looks like it's time. And now it looks like it's finally time for our nightly candid news report. I should read it like that. Patrick held a pocket watch with like a microphone and on his head and spoke like one of the announcers on his TV's past life. Half a year had passed since he began studying. Hershey finally understood enough that this world's language took the first step. Today we'll be looking at the cornerstone of our nation, and the first room of the headquarters is the finance of Baru. He certainly he certainly wasn't talking about variety narrator because certainly wasn't talking like a variety narrator because he was scared of the castle at night. And it was also because he learned up from books that evil spirits exist in this world. Definitely not those reasons. Oh, but it looks really, really dark. He looked at his surroundings. He had been depressed. When he had went out to meet the Earl, he hadn't noticed. But the moonlight was the only thing that illuminated the royal castle hallways. In his previous life, electricity was the majority source of energy, so even the night was bright. But in this world, electricity doesn't exist. Instead, wandering magical power exists. Hershrick did not have any magical power, but he did learn that fundamental knowledge needed for magic without actually being able to use it. And among those lessons, he learned that wandering magical power. This world's magical power exists in two forms: magical power that people can hold, and magical power that can drift in the air. Just like in the game, people's magical power measure measure in a magical points. If one uses it, MP would consume, and if one rests, it can be restored. And there are different amount and the differences among individuals, and through training, everyone can increase their maximum amount. Though this would be impossible for someone with initial value of nothing. Just as 0 times 100 is still 0. No amount of training can be meaningful to Herschel, and he's non-existent MP. Oh. The magical power that driven air is called the wandering magical power, which is a generic term for magical power produced by herbs, sea, river, tree, and elect. Just as trees produce oxygen through photosynthesis, it also produces magical powers. That's one heck of the world there. And this wandering magical power is the light energy that illuminates the street lights and room, the thermal energy that boils the water, cooling energy that keeps refrigerators such as cold, and mechanical energy that is used in the aquatics. In the aquatics. Resembling a type of floating electricity, there are many expectations for research and founding methods to writing in the albedo energy from the air. It's very eco-friendly energy, right? Since it came from nature, it won't pollute nature. In this world, there are no protestation. In this world, there's no protestations of environmental destructions like his previous life world. Although it could have been also said that this world's technology wasn't advanced enough to cause such destruction. Well, it looks like I finally reached it. This is the finance bureau's first room. Herschel looked up at the heavy wooden door. There was the door plate that says the first room of headquarters of the finance bureau. Herscherik pressed his tiny body against the door in an effort to move it. The majority of the doors in the castle were push-to-open doors. Even a young child like himself could open them. They were equipped with locks, and luckily for Herschel, they were left open tonight. It could be due to the negligence of Baru's manager, or they could been, or maybe they were unlocked for they could be unlocked for the night guard to make this round. Either way, Herschel was able to easily trespass into the room. Geh. Herschel reflexive frown at the moment he entered. In front of him was a very disorderly room. There were probably at least 10 people using this room. And top of each room, and on top of each desk was a mountain of jumbo document. Further in, there was a door that says the data room, along with few others. Each of these own door plated read Bureau Director's room, conference room, and so on. With this mess, they can't probably even work. Probably due, probably due to his Probably due to his past as an office worker, un, uh, Hershey, un, Hershey, un, unconscious, un, unconspicuously mumbled as an astonishing tone. When he worked in his past, when he worked in his past life, Ryoko's desk was neatly organized from data at her table to the files on her desk. This was because she understood that cleanliness was tied to efficiency of work. However, this place, the workers should be more worried about the fact that they weren't able even to know they lost any documents, let alone the efficiency of working in this state. Even if someone Even if someone stole their file, there are likely no one would notice. Likely no one would notice. Was it really alright for Baru in charge of this whole country's finance to be in such state? But it's better for me this way. Even if he were slightly charged of this Even if he were slightly changed the placement of documents or and any of them were to disappear, it would be difficult to pin actions on him. A small blessing for her shriek as he snuck inside. And now, I shall begin the internal audit. Audit, actually. Audit. Herscherik remembered his previous life. In the past, Ryoko served in the main office and worked as somewhat of an auditor for the branch officers. Legally speaking, as a branch officer, done anything using their own judgment. That will require some approval from the main office. Did they properly report all the income and the expenditures? Did they collect all the procedures? Did they collect all the payments without any problems? She investigated all the questionable areas of a level of persistency and the persistency that a pestering mother-in-law would use in relation to her daughters-in-law's cleaning. Cleaning. Hmm. Because a thorough investigation struck fear in the hearts of branch officers, she was nicknamed the Honorable Mother-in-law Rio, the auditor of the main office. To Ryoko, who didn't even have a boyfriend, let alone a husband, the nickname of mother-in-law was very far off. Hmm. Furthermore, if there were no problem, then Ryoko would have been the nickname about them. It's just that she did her work seriously and even gave advice, and she even gave advice and support. Despite being a regular worker, she earned a favorite trust from the branch workers and the area leaders and the branch managers and even those inside the main office. Through the personnel receiving this trust didn't know about it at all. For the time being, Hershey picked up a document from the less chaotic desk. Yep, it's dark. He tried to read the letters, but still dark to see easily. He walked towards the window, and the moonlight shone on the paper, making the words legible. The name of product. Is this the name of foodstuff? Apparently, the document on the list of ingredients were heading for the castle. Next was the name of food. Apparently, made of food. There was a list of containing of product location, the harvest period, and cost. Hmm. Of course. This is troubling. I'm not sure if these are reasonable. Not sure if they're reasonable prices or not. Although there were numerous, although there were numerous value listed, he didn't know if they were considered expensive or cheap. The fact that he didn't know the basic knowledge hurts him. Of course, he had completed the lesson on currency. This world's currency is copper coins, silver coins, and gold coins, and platinum coins. 100 copper coins is worth one silver coin. 100 silver coins is worth one gold coin, and finally, 100 gold coins is equivalent to one platinum coin. However, when the amount of money increased, it became too much to carry, in which a small check-like object called a bond can be used instead. But to use this as security, one needs approval from a legal office. But Hersher each couldn't figure out how much each denomination of a currency that was worth in this world and how much it could be exchanged for the item. So he could only scratch his head. At this rate, I will guess randomly and switch around. Hmm. Numbers do not lie. If they ever to tell a lie, it was only because there was a hole somewhere else. Telling the difference between what's determined whether telling the difference what determines whether which one's clever or not. Rashek repeatedly pulled out documents from the mountain and read them by the window in silence. Rashek rubbed his eyes wonder how much time has passed, opened the pocket watch and saw that it has been quite late into the night. In his past life, his body was more or less used to stay up late, but it seems that it's impossible for his current childish body, and the fatigue in his eye grew very, very quickly, and possibly due to his and possibly due to him reading by the moonlight. I really do want some light, or thinking about stealing a lamp from somewhere next time, next time. Mm, Let me finish the candy in my throat. Oh my gosh, it's getting away. Okay. I really do want some lights while thinking about stealing a lamp from somewhere next time. We played around the pocket watch. It would be better if I could at least use enough magic to get some light. If he could do so, then he would have suffered reading under the reliable moonbeam. To recall his first lesson about humming and incarnation, but this was little different than normal words. If Japanese was spoken language, then incarnation would be like English. In order to use magic, one need to invoke technical words known as magical words, like a switch. As such, in order to use magic, knowledge, and skills of magical words were more important than magical power. Higher ranking magicians can easily use magic these without using these magical words. With magicians being on general terms for those who could use magic. But even after Herschel finished reciting these magical words, nothing around him changed except for someone without any magical power. Just kidding. A little discouraged, Herschel decided to turn back to his room. He stood up and something abnormal happened in his body. A sensation of resembled trembling chill ran through his right hand, and all of a sudden, a white ball of light appeared right before his eyes. Yeah! Herschel was about to scream at the sudden ball of light, but he quickly covered his mouth in panic. He was supposed to move like a ninja. If he were to make a racket, then all his hard work would go to waste. Because he reflexively covered his mouth, he ended up dropping the pocket watch. The moment it hit the floor, he let out a high pitched sound and the ball disappeared. The ball of light disappeared. Huh? A question mark appeared in Herschel's head as he picked up the fallen pocket watch. It was very faint, and he felt like the beautiful old silver watch had gave off a faint glow when the white ball of light appeared. Hmm. And once again he recited magical words. After feeling a trembling sensation again, the ball of light appeared once more. While holding the pocket watch, he slowly moved away from the light. After after which he imagined turning off the light, the ball of light disappeared without a sound. He let go of pocket watch and cast the spell once again, but neither the feeling of nor a ball of light appeared. There were only one hypothesis he could think of. This pocket watch was somehow collected the wandering magical power, and responded to his magical words and invoked its spells for the light. A surprisingly convenient item. Although this was magic that could lit small light, it was still magic, and that trembling feeling must have been the sensation of using magic. And since I'm utilizing wandering magical power, I don't get tired. This desolation. This elation was what was like when one get their hands on a newly released game. This is a fantasy world. Herschel cheered inside his head. Let me just double check. Let me just double check my volume. I just want to double check my volume. Shit. okay. Where was I again? Yes, you don't get tired. Huh. Got many magic. Na, 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 na. Da, 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 da. Let me just actually. How about we take a little short break while I figure out how this works. Just gonna make this a little bigger because I want to have a check on the volume too. It should be okay. Right? Can I do this? Yes, I can do this. Okay, okay, okay. I like this. Where was I? Although this was magic that lit a small light, this was still magic, and that troubling feeling that must have been a sensation of using magic. Since I'm utilizing wandering magic, I don't get tired. This elation was like one get their hands on Neely Billy's game. This is a fantasy world. Herschel cheered inside his head. Herschel returned to his room, and the very next day he was tired from using he tried to use different magic with the watch, but the watch was silent. Well, it's a pocket watch. Of course it doesn't speak. The result of his test was that this observed tiny amount of wandering magic in his surrounding and could utilize them. Hershey could use only a trivial magic like creating a light ball or lighting up a candle. This was like the despair you get when the newly released game you reserved and waited for so long turned out to be the utter failure. The utter failure. Hershey hung his head. Well, at least he could read document at night, preventing the darkness, ruining his eyesight. A move that you would see in anime. A person would slide on their knees and then prostrate in front of the person, and immediately the immediate form for asking forgiveness. Part two. Part two. Part two. Part two. On this night of the Grace's Kingdom Castle was ruled by darkness. The evening moon was hidden behind clouds and darkness outside seeped into the castle, obscuring everything. An intruder snuck in, completely suppressing his presence. He easily avoided the night watch and secretly entered the target's room. This intruder, this intruder worked as a spy for a legal underground guild. Not possessing any particular master, the spy would fulfill his employer's contract within the deadline in exchange for a high price. A very convenient for those of shady background who wanted to do something quietly. The contents of his jobs include gathering information on opposing parties, including incriminating evidence, and sometimes even assassination. All jobs that come to him were certainly illegal and tricky, but he always completed his job. Shadowfang. The intruder didn't have a name, nor he gave one out. As such, those around him gave him this name out of fear. He was a shadow who quietly drawn near by the time his victim notices him, and it's too late to stop the fang from cutting their neck. But not everyone could hire him. That is because the cost of hiring from the underground guild grows in proportion to the request taker's ability. In order to hire someone powerful enough to earn such nickname, a benefit a benefiting settlement was required. The price was even higher considering His great abilities gained the right to choose his jobs. This time, his task was to retrieve the report submitted by a certain aristocrat to the royal palace. This aristocrat had mixed up the document that he was meant to give in place of one he wanted to hide. As such, the job could only be described as cleaning up an idiot's mess. Oh dear. Just, just infiltrating this place was already quite troublesome. This was the royal castle of imperial power. Their guards weren't as lax as those in other aristocrat manors, and first-rate barrier was employed everywhere. The invader carried the invader carried such nickname for a reason. He infiltrated this place that was possible for him. But if he could, he would prefer to stay away from here. I chose the wrong job. The intruder clicked his tongue inside his head. The job was introduced to in the guild. He didn't seem to be that difficult. Besides, the compensation was large, and when compared to the job's content, it's considering the fact that he needed money to pay some expenses. He decided to accept the job, but after signing the contract, the employer declared that the place he'll be infiltrating would be the royal castle. that is why no one, that's why no one else accepted, despite the large reward. The infiltrator felt like saying, the most appealing story always had a catch. Sipping a deep inside his mind. He later heard the guild receptionist that aristocrat had repeatedly done the same thing again and again, resulting in hatred towards him from all the underground members. They all grumbled, telling that he should have accepted such a job. But, like the guild's meditation charge was also a lot. Hmm. He replied in the manner of a typical of underground guild member. His trait of not socializing with people also backfired on him. If any, if he had any comrade, if he had any other comrade, he might have gotten some warning from them. Neither way, it was already too late. But even if there were foul play involved, it could have been a detrimental to his future jobs if he ripped off his contract that he has previously accepted. It may have been illegal, but it was a paid work, and getting the work that depended on his credibility. Therefore, he infiltrated the royal castle despite his aggra- aggravation hasting towards his target. He looked around the room. According to the information, this could have been a room with my objective. But what the heck is this place? The room was large and probably occupied around by 20 people. Practically, all the desks was covered by piles of documents, making the room feel oppressive and narrow. Searching for documents in a mess will probably require considerable amount of effort. For the time being, he head towards the seat belongs to one of the highest position. This was probably the was probably the department head sat, and hopefully from that he could grasp the distribution of the work in his room. He thought that this would make his job faster first to get a lay on the land. Compared to other desks, this was orderly and made with the highest quality. He began searching through documents on top of the desk that seems all too familiar with the process. But he certainly heard a sound. The sound surprised the man. He stopped moving. He drew his knife and looked around at his surroundings. But there was no one around. He was remained the only being in his darkness space, and this dark space possessed by mountains of document. Was it my imagination? Thinking so, he put away his weapon. He was also about to stretch. He was also about to stretch his hand out for another document, but he halted all movement. His gaze was met by a face that situated underneath the desk and was about to rampage through. Good evening? An idiotic, childish voice echoed through the room. The owner of the voice tilted his head up at the intruder with embarrassment. embarrassed look on his face. It was Hershik, who had been crouching underneath the desk to avoid being discovered. He was also challenging the mountain of document again this evening, and this time with light. 1 month have already passed since you started this, an official internal audit. He had just begun to grasp the structure of ranking and an organization and the distribution of this job. Because he was too engrossed by the documents, he didn't notice the intruder until he heard the movement rustling above head. In another word, not until there was a noise on top of his head directly above him. Nevertheless, he was the only one who came to this place around this time, and so he was expecting to be alone. And since the intruder was that silent, that can't be helped. Can it be helped? He's probably not a person from the castle, since he's fully dressed in black and all. Hershey looked at the person in a pearl black cloak that seems to make him disappear into the night. He was also covering his mouth with a black cloth on a black cloth had a black hood, and the only thing he could see in front of him was eye. What is this? The only thing he could see of him were his eye. The only thing he could see were his eyes. In this night, the moon was obscured by clouds, his eye illuminated by the faint light that looks dark. Just silence the phone. Dark. However, on a closer inspection, they were like red like blood. Hershey could clearly see those eyes froze at these unexpected situations, and Hershey would froze if he see a random child come out of underneath the desk too. Is me being here bad? Hershey asked as he looked at his pocket watch. It was almost time for the night guard to arrive. While he was checking the time, he heard footsteps getting closer. He also saw eyes of a man in front of him flustered. Hershey hesitated, but only for a moment. He quickly returned the pile of documents he had been reading from back to the desk, and he slipped past the intruder and head towards the hallway. The intruder saw Hershey start to leave and return his senses. Normally, he was able to handle these situations, but unexpectedness had slowed down his brain and caused him to let his guard down. He knew this would be bad if the soldier were called, so he quickly captured the boy. However, because his movement was slow due to the shock, Hershey has already rushed out into the hallway, including the child. Should I get rid of the patrol? Including the child, should I get rid of the patrol? That's mean, man. Killing a random child connected to his job will leave a bad taste in his mouth. But it couldn't be helped. With a nimble flick of his wrist, the intruder had nice grasp his hand. He peeked out the door into his hallway. Thereupon he saw a child and a soldier conversing in the middle of the path. Rather, he saw the guard scolding the child. Your Highness Hershey, how many times I must tell you to stop having these tests of courages? I'm, I'm sorry. The child addressed by the guard as Your Highness was bowing his head in apology. Even though the soldier was only a retainer, he scolded the child as he was a boy of his own. The intruder froze again, witnessing another bizarre scene. Well, now I will escort you back tonight. So please, let us go. And next time I will find you out here in the middle of the night, I will report this to Your Majesty. Do you understand? Understood. I will make sure that you don't find me next time. Your Highness, Hershrik. Good grief. The soldier let out a sigh and led the child away. His tone was like of a father, and although his facial expression couldn't be seen, there's no doubt of the air of resignation, and his laugh could be a restrained one. Hershrik observed the soldier in front of him before turning around. He lightly waved his hand, smiling at the intruder who had been waiting and watching from inside the room. And then Hershey ran up to the soldier and, and, uh, and nonchalantly began chatting with him in a jovial manner. With that, the soldier left, completely unaware of the intruder in the room behind him. The intruder froze stiff with
unexpected scenery piled up on top of each other. All he could do was watch the night guard and the prince walk away, but unsatisfied by his lack of progress, and he was forced to retreat. Herschrik the Seventh Prince, the youngest prince of Guarnus' kingdom, for whom the king had the most affection for. At the banquet in the beginning of the spring celebrating his third birthday, it was discovered that a certain earl had been committing a treason towards this nation, and this gone public, becoming a common topic of discussion within the country. Herschel's name was introduced to the public only twice, through the announcement of his birthday and through that incident. Though the citizen, though the citizen didn't pay much attention to the news, it was already the seventh time they celebrate a prince's birthday, and if one were to add the number of celebrations for princesses, one would run out of finger which to count. Furthermore, news that the country's corruption was everyday occurrences, rather than worrying about such distant problems. The citizens were more concerned how were they going to live through their tomorrow. When the intruder learned about the story the next day, he was in full confusion. That was the prince? But why was he sneaking around in the middle of the night looking for a bunch of documents? The intruder's answer appeared before him at night. Um, Good evening, Mr. Intruder. When the infiltrating when he infiltrated the palace again, he returned to the same room. He found the boy sitting and waiting by the window. Unlike last time, the moonbeam illuminated his room. The blonde hair looked like magic in the flight, and his blue eye gave off even more of fantastical air. The intruder didn't sense any hostility in those eyes, but the scene itself was still bizarre and unrealistic as before due to the young prince present here in the middle of the night. The intruder instinctively drew his knives, but Hershik panicked and waved his hand in front of him, showing that he held no ill will. Held no ill will. Wait, 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 wait a second. There's no one here besides me. By the way, the night guard wouldn't come here until about an hour from now. What do you want? The intruder spoke. The intruder speak. Vigilantly. Mm. Vigilantly. Vigilantly in a low voice. Hershik looked. Hershik took this was a sign of a man was willing to listen and felt relief. I have something I want to ask you. Hershik said as he held out the document without lowering the knives. Without lowering the knives, the intruder peered at the page. On top was a list of food and furniture purchased and used for the castle. The intruder took his head in puzzlement. And Hershik asked with a serious face, "Are the costs of these expensive, or are they cheap?" The strangeness of question paralyzed the intruder's mind as such answered without thinking. It's 3 times greater than the lowest price. They have qualities too, but it's a bit of a ripoff. You didn't have to. It's a bit of a ripoff. He didn't have work. He would imagine with living. He would. He would. He didn't have work. He would mingle with and live among ordinary folk. He didn't. He went out to marketplace on occasions. The price listed on a document will make everyone's eyebrow knit and will be in bewilderment. Hershey expected an answer, letting out a sigh of scratching his head. That is what I thought, though it somewhat can't be helped. Hershey had begun to mumble to himself and let out a huge sigh. But it can't be helped. Hershey began to mumble to himself and letting out another sigh, facing the intruder. Thanks. The people in this castle wouldn't tell me, so you're really helpful. I am Hershey. What is your name? I don't have one. Don't have one. The intruder answered. Later on, he wondered why the answer was so obediently. Just that, in the situation, he found neither hostility nor anything unfair. He found it ridiculous to be aware of Hershey, who smiled and addressed him like an old friend. Then can I call you Mr. Coral? Can I call you Mr. Coral? Right? Can I call you Mr. Coral? Alright. This was the name Ryoko This was the name of Ryoko's family dog. It was a large black dog with a scary face. And it, and it made all the neighborhood kids cry. But in reality, it was a friendly creature that could hardly ever bark at people. When Hershey saw the intruder's figure, fully dressed in black, he was reminded of his beloved dog Coral. Mr. Coral, why are you here? Since you helped me, I want to thank you. Oi, I'm more or less an intruder, you know. Coral, the intruder, couldn't understand why he'd been addressed so casually. Hershey sensed Coral's feeling and grumbled while looking up at the ceiling. Ugh. Ah, you when you infiltrated the castle, I knew you were quite a skilled person. Plus, if you were out there alive, you would probably have finished your job the last time. I'm not dead yet. This means you have another motive, right? If he was serious, my head would have been sent flying off. Hershey was aware that his own compatibility and practically was non-existent. Nevertheless, he needed someone who knew that he was going outside. He needed someone. He needed someone who knew what's going on outside. Even though he asked Mira, she wouldn't give him an answer. His father was busy, so he didn't want to bother him. All the other princesses and as all the other princesses Corsair, Corsair were celebrities, so he was hesitant to ask them questions. In addition, if hey, a 3-year-old asked, it was a doubtful they would properly answer them. That is why that is why I help you. I value my life. If I quickly give you what you want, you will quickly leave, and that is my true intention. Frederick said and smiled wildly. It was meant a refreshing smile, but to Koro it looked bold. But an underground person would use anything he can use. Koro disclosed the detail of his task, the kind of report he was looking for, and it was submitted without revealing his employer. When he was finished, Herstrick thought that a couple of seconds were pointed towards the pile of documents on one of the desks. Ah, it could be one of those piles over there. There are a bunch of uncompleted documents. And those were Coral fishing through the bunch of documents. Ah! Okay. I'm about to have dinner. Where was I again? Hmm. Where is it? Just as the boy said, he was able to find his target. That is right. Mm, that is right. There was a bunch of strange number on the report, so it bothered me. But if you wanted to replace them, correct? To Coral's sound, it sounds like Hershey already had checked the content of those documents. It caused Coral's intense gaze to fall on him, but the boy merely shrugged his shoulder. Coral later learned that this prince has actually checked it and decided to hand it over like a dope. In fact, if the boy didn't know about the document, he would probably have tried to buy some time. He definitely would have tried to see Coral and press him about the correct document, depending on the seriousness of its content. These thoughts were vaguely these thoughts vaguely ran through Coral's mind. He looked on with a doubtful eye. And Hershey smiled and sweetly and went on. I won't tell anyone, so don't worry. If a teeny kid like me were to say something, no one would ever bother to listen. Well, at least for now. Later, Coral slapped the document in his silence and his client client's face and fulfill his contract. Still, the reputation of his skill grew, and he was frequently begun to accept requests to infiltrate the royal castle. Quirrell had thought that he would never want to do such thing again, but in the end he was intrigued by the prince. Each time he infiltrated the castle, he encountered the prince in place, he would at least expect to find a child. Yay! I finished chapter 4! um, I have not read aloud for a long time, so it might have probably hindered some of my clarity. But thank you for coming. Okay, it was really fun reading. Let me just double check. Oh yes, 1 hour and 1 minute. Just about. Today's a little longer due to a few interruptions and my scuff mouth of walking. Oh dear. Let's see, where is there? Yeah. And let's cue the ending music. Let's cue the ending music. Boom bang, boom bang bang, boom bang, boom bang bang, boom bang, boom bang bang, boom bang, boom bang bang. Yeah. All right. See you guys next time. I haven't actually drawn stream in a very long time. Let's see. I will try to do a reading stream more frequently. I'm gonna try doing a reading stream more frequently. And yeah, thank you for coming. This time there's no music. Probably kind of hinders my voice. And number 2, I just probably found that it might be better if I just, read it without any interruptions. Or maybe there was interruption in the middle. You can also hear the fan / air conditioner in my room. Summer, right? Everyone need a little cooling. Phew. Oh. Alright. It ends here, really.